Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards, where no ship is safe from being taken down to its nuts and bolts. Like I said in the first episode, this whole channel was basically started on a dare. My friend saw a very profanity-laden post I had written about the Venator and said I should turn it into something like this. Well, this ship involves no fewer than 4 profanity-laden posts. Buckle up, everyone. As you probably guessed from the title of this episode, we'll be talking about the Nightflyer from the SyFy channel series of the same name. In fact, naming series and shows and movies after the predominant ship or station or vessel seems to be kind of a common thing in science fiction. Whatever. But coming back to the steaming pile of suck and fail that is the Nightflyer, it basically got everything wrong from stem to stern. And we'll start today's conversation at that very peculiar-looking bow with its 6 funny little domes hanging off of it. Yes, as they look, those domes are in fact glass-topped, or something that appears to be glass in some sort of geodesic structure. Now, this being science fiction, of course, there are all kinds of things that could be taking the place of that glass, up to and including transparent aluminum. But the point is, in most cases, things you can see through are not as strong as things you cannot. So, you're going to put things that are not as strong as other things at the very front of a ship. All right, fine. Like we talked about in the last episode with the Star Furies, there isn't a whole lot of stuff out there in space. There's a very limited amount of gas and a few chunks of rock and whatever else floating around out there. But the point is, a lot of it's either moving pretty fast by itself or you're moving pretty fast towards it. And maybe having the front of your ship being that structurally weak is not such a good idea. What's worse is the Nightflyer is a long-duration craft with not too terribly advanced technology from where we are right now. So she actually has gardens in at least 2 of those domes that are meant to feed the crew on their flight. So if those get compromised, where's your food going to come from, first of all? But second of all, plants are integral in maintaining a breathable and oxygen-rich environment on board a ship. Uh-oh. But, as these things frequently do, it only gets worse from there. As you might have figured from the way that the domes are oriented, pointing up towards the center of the ship, they do in fact rotate to simulate gravity. Okay, fine. Simulating gravity is always beneficial for us humies going into deep space, unless you want to end up like the Belters from Expanse. But let's not cantilever out the big spinny chunks of stuff away from the hull of the ship. In fact, not only is the entire spinning section cantilevered away from the ship, each individual component is cantilevered from the central hub. It's not connected on both sides, it's only connected on one. Let's assume that we don't have some sort of unobtainium here, but that's kind of a precarious situation, structurally speaking. So since the domes rotate to simulate gravity, clearly the rest of the ship must as well, right? No! That's where this all goes to Gosa. So, the rest of the ship actually achieves simulated gravity through thrust. It burns at 1 g or something less, and the entire ship basically turns into a flying skyscraper with all of the levels oriented crosswise across the ship's narrow section. So basically the bridge of the ship is that little tiny dome that's at the center of the rotational hub for the glass domes. And they can look up out of the bridge and see those domes. Well, that all works all good and well, except the rotating domes are under 1 g of thrust as well, which means they're rotating at something. Let's just say 1 g to make it simple. It's probably less than that. They're rotating at 1 g outward, and then they're being pulled 1 g backwards, which means the people inside the domes are actually experiencing somewhere near 1.4 g's at a 45-degree downward angle towards the back corner of the domes. Okay, let's take a moment here and recap, because we honestly haven't even gotten more than, I don't know, a sixth of the way down the length of the Nightflyer. So far, we put glass or glass-looking domes at the very front of the ship, where they would be easy to damage, and if they got damaged, would invariably damage the rest of the ship because pieces would fall off of them, and since the ship is under thrust, it would accelerate through the debris cloud. In fairness, this is actually something the show did touch on, but still, why would you do that? Second, the domes rotate to simulate gravity, except the rest of the ship simulates gravity with thrust. In fact, this is an integral part of one of the episodes. The ship loses thrust and people are floating around the bridge and we have to go reach a switch to do something. I don't remember. And anyways, the domes would really have to be oriented on an angle to do what they're doing, except they aren't, and no one seems to notice that they're being pulled backwards while they're inside the domes. Okay. Now, as my friends have pointed out to me, there are ships where this kind of idea would work, where they can get away with simulating gravity both by thrust and by rotating. Perhaps one of the most notable ones of recent history is the Argo-class dropship from the recent Steam game Battletech. It actually has 3 cylindrical pods that, when she's in orbit around a planet or just coasting through space, she can rotate those pods out and then spin them. And then when she's under thrust, transiting to and from a jump point or whatever it is she's doing, those pods can fold back into the hull and get in line with the thrust vector of the ship. So basically the humans hang out in these 3 pods, and then all of the equipment and all the mechs and all of the reactors and power plants and whatever else is in the ship are all in the null gravity section, where it doesn't really matter if they have gravity or not. Additionally, going back to our last episode, there is the Omega-class destroyer from the Earth Alliance in Babylon 5, where a significant chunk of it rotates and a significant chunk of it does not, and like I mentioned, us humies don't have the complicated necessary technology to make that play together very well. However, it's basically universally accepted that Earth Force ships are terribly uncomfortable, terribly hard to work with, and bare bones in every kind of Spartan sense of the word. So when you have to buckle in during combat, you already know that it's going to be kind of exciting. So, yes, there are concepts where that would work. It does involve a lot of moving parts that the Nightflyer does not have. So those domes are still just breaking physics, along with, breaking. Okay, enough about the domes, even though they are so tremendously horrible. To go to the other end of the ship now, it does have quite a complement of reaction thrusters and other kinds of engines all over its stern. One weird detail: apparently those engines can only be reset from a hard fault from inside whatever passes as their combustion chamber. It's all magic hand-wavery nonsense about nuclear drives and radiation and this, that, and the other, but the simple fact is the reset switch is in the place that humans can't be when the engines are on. So you go in, you reset the engine, and the engine turns on. So how big is your engineering crew, and how good is their life insurance? And as a general point, the Nightflyer is basically a long-haul freighter / cruise liner, although it's light on the amenities for the crew and the passengers. But anyways, it's supposed to go off on its own for extended periods of time. Fine, all good and well. It has no ancillary craft. It doesn't have shuttles, it doesn't have loaders, it doesn't have orbital transfer vehicles, it doesn't have anything. Well, that's not true. It does have 1 life pod that's hidden and only has 1 seat. Who designed this again? And speaking of that life pod, it opens up the rest of the details with this ship, although they aren't technically design-wise, it's more of a universe problem again. So the Nightflyer is owned and operated exclusively by a tremendously neurotic captain who only interacts with everyone else by way of a hologram he can project almost anywhere. But that's because apparently he's an android, but no, he's not actually an android. He's some really weird vat-grown clone stuck in a tank who's been running everything from behind the scenes forever now. Okay, that's a weird nesting doll of horror. Also, he has a really bad habit of creeping out on the entire crew by way of cameras that are apparently everywhere, including in the showers of the ship. I cannot describe how not long that would last on any kind of ocean-going vessel right now, and how not long a person who did that would last. But let's just keep skipping through the crazy. I kind of exaggerated about the clone in a can controlling everything on the ship because the ship's computer AI is actually infected by the clone's mother's personality, which she uploaded right before her death. So we basically have what fundamentally amounts to be a ghost running around in the AI, causing all kinds of problems that include literally trying to crash the ship into a planet. No, seriously, who the hell designed this? And this flying nightmare contraption of impossible physics and utterly asinine design is the ship that gets chosen as the vehicle that carries the crew that goes out and meets a new and unknown species of alien. Because, I mean, as if first contact isn't a stressful and complicated enough situation, we have to have a blessed, damn near almost Flying Dutchman going out there and doing it. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, in fairness, and because I like being fair, they did get one thing right on the Nightflyer. In the medical bay on the ship, they had the ability to dump biohazards and stuff overboard. Thankfully, that system was actually put up against the exterior bulkhead of the ship. So the biohazard didn't actually have that far to go before it got dumped out into space. So, yay, you figured out how to do biohazard containment. You couldn't figure out reactors. You couldn't figure out glass domes. You couldn't figure out simulation of gravity. You couldn't figure out that you might need a frickin' shuttle. But hey, we can get rid of medical waste. Yay? Now, I will freely admit that I was not terribly impressed by the series as a whole, and apparently I wasn't alone, given that SyFy elected to not renew it for a new season. But that ship is just an entirely horrible idea from stem to stern. It looks cool. I mean, yeah, it does look kind of neat with that dome section up ahead of it and that long stalk behind it all flying in space. Unfortunately, its design realistically sucks hard enough that it should have collapsed into a singularity and vanished from the face of science fiction. Maybe one day. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube. Have a good day.